Hi, I'm Jamie Mason Cohen, and I'm the host of the Signature Leadership Show, where we look at world-class leaders' lives. And in doing so, it helps us uncover our own authentic selves so we can improve performance and live better lives. Our guest today is Wally Bressler. Wally is a best-selling author, XP Award winner, Quilly Award winner, has done thousands of trainings and presentations on sales. He developed the sales trigger system, will help any sales pro bring their triggers into the light and create a massive shift in their client retention and sales numbers and business opportunities. Really, to put it succinctly, he helps people get out of their own ways as a business coach, something I really relate to. He's also been featured on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, and many more. Welcome, Wally.
Hey, man. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for having me, Jamie.
I'd love to jump right in here and ask you, what is the importance of using empathy to help business leaders and managers get out of their own way to become successful?
I'm a big fan of Kristen Neff, Dr. Kristen Neff. She talks a lot about self-compassion. And, I think historically we're good at offering compassion to other people, but we don't do such a great job of offering that same compassion to ourselves. Globally, in my opinion, empathy is really just doing your best to truly understand what somebody's gone through or going through so that you can connect with them at the highest level and then give them actionable, meaningful strategies and support so that you can take them from where they are to where they want to be. Both of my parents died relatively young. My dad was 49, my mom was 64. But, somebody doesn't have to necessarily have had a parent die to be able to empathize with me. Right? And I think that's where a lot of people miss the boat there is, how can I put myself in your shoes? I've never had a parent die. Really what it comes down to is taking the time to see the feeling, understand the feeling, use that emotional intelligence to connect with somebody. And then when you're there, and you've got that rapport, really try and find out what the real problem is, what's causing the problem, and then use your skill set or connect them to somebody else who can then take them and bring them to where they need to be. Okay. And so the best leaders, they do that. They're empathetic. They stop, they listen, they find out what's going on, they understand. I'm not saying we have to baby people. Empathy is not babying somebody. You can still be firm with them and whatnot, but if you want people to listen to you and trust you and feel like you have their best interests at heart, you got to take the time to listen to them, understand what's going on, and use that empathy to connect so you can take them where they want to be. As far as helping people get out of their own way, we are vicious to ourselves. We are tougher to ourselves and on ourselves than we would be on anybody else. We say things that we would never say to anybody else. I try and tell people, hey, you should never say anything to yourself you wouldn't say to a child. You would never tell a kid that they were lazy or stupid or fat or dumb or, whatever. If you wouldn't say it to somebody else, don't say it to yourself. And in fact, offer yourself that same compassion, that same empathy, right? If I was saying something bad to myself, what if Jamie came to me and said, hey, you know what, man, I'm just sucking right now. My sales suck. I'm doing a terrible job. I'm bad at this. I'm bad at this. I'm bad at this. You wouldn't say, yeah, you are. God, you suck, Jamie. You're so effing lazy. What's your problem? You wouldn't say that to them. Come on, Jamie, let's go, brother. You cranked out sales last quarter. Let's talk about, the things you have accomplished. Let's stack some of that positive stuff. Let's not look at the lack. Let's look at the positive. And then let's really talk about what got you to where you are today and how we can go ahead and overcome that. Because I've seen you at your best and I know you can do your best. So whatever I would say to Jamie, I got to say to myself, I got to offer myself that same level of compassion and empathy. And by doing that, I can get myself out of where I need to be as well.
So I love that. So Wally, what I'm hearing is that empathy toward ourselves, which usually we think of empathy directed outward, would be treat that person like a dear family member or friend and provide them or extend to them the same level of compassion.
100%.
We would hope.
The challenge is that 2 out of 3 salespeople suffer from a very strong need to be approved of or accepted. And a lot of that stems from some trouble they had as a child. But because when we don't approve of ourselves and we're always seeking external approval, it's very easy for us to go ahead and really cap on ourselves, to not be nice to ourselves, to be mean to ourselves, because we don't even already see ourselves as a good person, as worthy, as valuable, right? And so that's why it's so easy to go to that. Plus, we compare ourselves to people all the time. And it's just, with comparisons to Thief of Joy, as you've probably heard before. So, we really need to stop in the moment, get mindful, stop and just take a breath, relax for a second, and say, okay, like, I'm not a bad person. Okay, I'm not lazy. I'm not stupid. There is a problem here, but I know I can go get it fixed. And go from there.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So what I appreciated about what you just said was, first of all, extend that same level of respect and compassion to others, to yourself as you would do for others. And
Mm-hmm.
two is comparison is the thief of joy. So
Mm-hmm.
we want to look at our own progress of our own journey of where we came from, about the journey we've come from, and not compare to the salesperson or the business
Mm-hmm.
leader beside us.
100%.
I'd love to transition a little bit and go a little deeper into another area that I've watched another video that really inspired me. And it was a short video, so I'd love for you to expand on this because I think it's an area that is underserved and essentially not spoken enough about, and that's bullying at work. And so we just talked about the reason to provide empathy toward others and ourselves. I'll start this off by saying that leadership is a lack of empathy and self-awareness about how you're harming instead of
Mm-hmm.
empowering someone at work. Can you expand on that?
And maybe because I was bullied when I was younger, maybe it's a sensitive topic for me. I don't know. Some of my kids have been bullied. I don't know. But I getting triggered is probably strong because I don't freak out. But whenever I see somebody who positions themselves as an expert or leader and they're online and, talking about how they should talk to somebody, oh, come on, pull up, they get to say to a guy, pull up your skirt, just go pick up the phone and get on the phone. It's not that hard. You're hurting your family. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, or stuff like that, or what's your problem? Why can't you do this? Like, what the f? Rather than, and then listen again. Empathy is not about babying anybody. Okay, you still have to be firm. You still have to be direct at times. You still have to be able to go ahead and get people to perform, which requires accountability and doing things that other people won't do. I get all that. But one of the first things I learned from my mentor in real estate was be hard on the problem and soft on the person. Be hard on the problem and soft on the person. Okay, you can be direct. You can hold people accountable. You can use very direct language. I don't care. But if you hire somebody to do a job and you're putting them in a position to do that job and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, no amount of leaning on them, yelling at them, screaming at them, cajoling, arm twisting, pushing, pulling, nothing's going to make them do that, right? Because their identity is such that they just don't believe they can do it, right? But you see so much, like, it's just, especially in real estate, this drives me crazy. You see other real estate agents capping on other real estate agents, like saying mean, nasty things about making fun of them, making fun of their work ethic, you know what I'm saying? And then you go and look, and this person has 3 home sales themselves, And so I think it's important as a leader, that we just don't sit there and say, just do it, just do it, just do it. That we get to the point where we try and understand, right? I don't know who said it, but it was like, get out of judgment and, and into understanding, get into understanding and out of judgment, or whatever it is. But just find out what the problem is and then help them fix it. If they can't fix it, then it's been nice knowing you. Have a good day, But I think that's what a good leader does, is they take a minute to stop and look at what's going on and just don't look at person. Like, I don't believe in laziness. I don't think laziness exists. I really think it's 100% connected to whatever's going on emotionally inside of somebody, and usually it's attached to low self-esteem, low self-worth, lack of belief that they can accomplish things or that they're even worth anything. So, it's not just, hey, you're lazy, get your ass out of bed. It's, hey, listen, you're not getting out of bed. Why you're not getting out of bed, and digging deeply and finding what that is, and then empower them to fix it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm hearing you. The part that I really liked, the nuanced component, and I haven't heard anyone say it like this before, but it was impactful to me, was when you spoke about it's okay to focus on the problem, just not the person. So the task, not make it personal. And people like me who are highly sensitive by nature and who manage that, it's a blessing and a curse, because sometimes we can exaggerate or we can build up something that was a small slight that someone was not aware of into something bigger. What I like about this is letting people know that as a manager or as a leader, to really make people understand that it's about what we're both looking in the same direction of. We're trying to solve this problem. It's not about you. It's not about your identity, and it doesn't reflect on your identity if you made a mistake or I give you some constructive criticism.
Sure. I'm a big fan of using your statements when it's good, positive feedback. And I'm a big fan of saying, here's the problem and this is what we have to look at. How do we solve the problem when it's not so good feedback? You know what I'm saying? You're doing a great job. You're amazing. You're amazing at this. You're incredible at this. I love how you did this. Okay, so here's what we need to work on this, and here's what needs to be improved on here. Rather than saying that's a terrible call, you're horrible on the phone. I'm saying that labeling thing on the negative side really works against people. And look, I've had tough times. I know you've had tough times. Tough times, they build tough people, right? I get that. But there is a point sometimes where no matter how tough you are on somebody, they're not going to be able to move an inch forward because they need somebody to go in and open up the hood of the car and say, okay, here's what's wrong. The carburetor's, it's broken or whatever, and then say, okay, here's how you fix the carburetor and here's how you go. And this is the resilience portion we were talking about. This is how you then go back and say, remember when you overcame this and remember when you overcame this and remember when you overcame this, right? You're looking at all these experiences and saying they made you this unskilled, person who is unable to accomplish great things. Where really what you should say is, look at all the crap I've overcome in my life. I am a world beater. Let's go and change the meaning of whatever these things are. And then let's use those as, hey, listen, I'm a resilient mother effer, man. Like I'm like an armadillo. You know what I'm saying? Like I can take a direct shot. And when they transition it and they use that as ammo for feeling better and they work through the crap they need to work through, that toughness then becomes a badge of honor, a badge of courage, and not, a failure.
What I learned there is the power of reframing those potentially feelings of negative feedback into, like you used the metaphor of an armadillo, about how those tough times make us into superheroes, make us into much more powerful beings than we initially would have if we didn't go through those changes.
Right on, right on.
What I'd love to do now, Wally, is transition into something that I do on this show, which I'll look at my world-class leaders' handwriting on the spot. We haven't rehearsed this. And I'm going to look for, within 10 to 15 seconds, a few traits that are based on the handwriting and pull that into our conversation, which is touched on empathy and bullying at work, also about reframing negatives into positives and more. So would you mind pulling up your handwriting on the screen, and I'm going to take a look at it?
If you find positive traits, I wrote this with my hand. If you find negative traits, I wrote it with my feet. So just use my toes.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right, I need a second because it's a little pixelated just based on the platform. So with handwriting, a stroke is a stroke wherever we find it. So this is a challenge just because of the technology. It's nothing to do with Wally or my screen, because it's a little pixelated. But I'm going to just go on strokes, and I'm going to focus on your signature with what I can see. Yeah, just hold it there. Hopefully the camera will, okay, leave it there. So let's hold it up there for a second. I'm going to talk through as I'm analyzing this. And what I'm going to focus on is the last name. And the last name is written extremely strong with pressure. And it's a real forward jolt to the right. And just hold it up there for another second, because it's a little hard to make out some of the actual handwriting itself. But I'm going to focus on the signature. Okay, so you can bring it down for a second. I might have to get a look. Yeah, no, it's really the technology that I'm using, Riverside.
Okay.
It shows you as a little pixelated. I'm clear, but you're not.
You know what? It does the same thing with me for you too. I'm happy to take a picture and text it to you if you like. But
you know what? I'm going to see how I do. Just one or two strokes, because I tell people it's not about the letters, even if you're writing changes. It's actually about the strokes. And I've seen strokes thousands of times that at this point, I can make about a quick judgment as to what that might be. So in your actual signature, I've actually written it down here so they can see. Like I've almost tried to copy it. It looks like this really, and I would imagine, is that your full name? That heavy stroke, that's your last name?
I mean, my first name's Walter, so you get most of the W, and then my middle name's Robert. My last name's Bressler, so I just usually it tails off.
Yeah,
I've always written it that way. In fact, when we go out for dinner, my kids laugh at me because I sign their receipt when I sign it with a W. They're like, "Hey, I can fill this out for you, Dad." They just write the W and they go.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing with that last name, with that one stroke, as hard as this might be to believe, with what you could see in that one stroke. So it's really strong depth. You put particular pressure, unless I could be wrong with the rest of the writing. I was looking at depth. That's the pen pressure, right? So nothing in handwriting is accident. It's what lies beneath the surface.
Mm-hmm.
You can't lie when it comes to handwriting. Not that you would. It's a
Mm-hmm.
reflection of how you're showing up in the world. That level of pressure might represent that you'll forgive, but you won't forget when it comes to your past. So based on challenges that you've dealt with connected to your last name. So it doesn't necessarily mean there was someone in your immediate past who did something to you. It just means that growing up, you experienced pain or trauma or difficulties, and you do not forget what happened, but you've reframed those as you've moved on. So you feel things deeply. You are a person that I would say still waters run deep, that whatever you show on the surface, you have layers and layers that only people who you really trust will really get to know, and that you're not an open book with that because you've learned over time to take time and trust before you truly show your full vulnerable self. But yet, that level of pressure and depth shows that you have the ability to empathize, as we've been talking about, but your empathy is to the point where you have the ability to feel what other people are feeling because of that depth of pressure, because of what's happened to you, but yet you're an objective thinker. So you have this paradox, and people are paradoxical, so that you will look at someone else's problems or challenges, but you'll be able to cut through the
Mm-hmm.
BS and help them with just enough compassion and empathy that goes right on the border of, I'm going to help you, but I'm also not going to get so wrapped up in your stuff that I can't see with a clear field as to what is going on. So a metaphor would be, you can, if we were in a nightclub, you could look at from the DJ's booth, looking down and seeing the person on the dance floor going through their day to day and getting in their own head. And then you could actually come down from the DJ booth, stand beside them and say, hey, I can help you on this level, but I'm also seeing from this view from the balcony, and having the ability to move back and forth with a level of depth that most people never get to.
It's pretty mind-boggling how you figured all that out. That's crazy. That's insane, dude. I mean, all of that, 100%. And the one thing that I have that used to be a much bigger issue for me, which isn't as much now, is that getting too involved in people's lives. You know, and what I've learned from myself and with dealing with other people is a lot of times when we experience pain and trauma as a child, and we don't really have a lot of self-love and self-acceptance. Number one, it's very painful for us to go and deal with it. Number two, it's a lot easier to go find somebody else to help and feel good about that than trying to work on our own stuff. And then a lot of that is a result of having very poor boundaries. And so we can get way too involved with people, way too connected with them. And having, been sexually abused by a woman when I was 10, that really impacted my relationships with women. And I spent tens of thousands of dollars in my lifetime trying to help other women, and then hoping that by helping them that they would want to be with me, and never worked out. So I appreciate that. Yeah, the other thing is, which I thought was really interesting, all that from a little signature. Oh, it's definitely darker on the end there. It's really weird. And two things. I've lived with fear and anxiety since I was probably 6. And so, when we go out to eat and go to restaurants, I'm always looking around, and my kids want to know why I'm looking around. I'm like, guys, I've just been doing it my entire life. It's the way I've been protecting myself, just continually looking around. The other thing is I can often tell that something's wrong with somebody just by looking at them or talking to them. You know what I'm saying? It's really weird, and that's also been a protection mechanism too. Like, I'll say to somebody, like, what's going on? They're like, nothing. I'm like, well, I'm looking at your face. Something's going on. No, nothing's going on. I'm like, did something happen today? And then, then they're, and so that's weird. That's, that I've done that too, And then the last thing is there's different levels of vulnerability. I'm good with, I got to explain this. I'm good with everything, but in the past, basically, and I'm working on, like you said, but emotional vulnerability, like being emotionally vulnerable, pretty much every standard guy on the face of the planet. I'm much better at it now. I was terrible at it, but yeah, I'll tell you anything you want to know. But when it comes to the stuff that's really deep down inside me, it's not usually for public consumption. So, yeah, that's creepy and cool all at the same time.
Thank
Yeah.
you, and thanks for sharing.
Mm.
I appreciate that
My
vulnerability,
pleasure. Yeah.
because you and I have just met.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
there's something abnormal. You have a podcast too of doing this with someone you've just met, even though it was through a trusted source that we met. But thank you for that.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
think that alone is a role model for other people and other
I
leaders to
appreciate
see that.
that. And I don't know about you. I mean, I've done some research on you, and I mean, you definitely share some things about yourself. I just, the thing for me is I've found that the more vulnerable I am with people, the easier it is for them to connect with me, if that makes any sense. And so,
Yeah.
to that
Hmm.
end, I think they appreciate that vulnerability and they're more willing to be vulnerable themselves, right? Because, we're not getting to the bottom of anything until we are vulnerable and realizing that vulnerability is strength and not weakness.
Yeah, and there's more and more studies that show that leaders who share what would be appropriate vulnerability, like in every, it's not wearing your emotions on your sleeve or gossiping or just saying whatever's on your mind. When leaders admit mistakes within a professional context to people who are their juniors or direct reports, or what you just did, which is this is something from my past that's helped shape me who I am, which I'd love to follow up on. Anything that you're comfortable, only if you're comfortable sharing, people see those people and us as more human,
Sure.
as more flawed, and even if it's things that happen to us, relatable in some
Approachable.
way, more
Yeah.
authentic. Wally, was there something in your past? You mentioned things or you touched upon them. It might not be that, it might be something else where that situation, that incident, or even that story, that real life story, has played more of a role than any other incident, event, or story to help shape you as a leader, who you are today?
I think most people have had some sort of life changing experience. The question is the extent to which they let it change their life. How much they stuff it down. But it's really, yeah, that sexual abuse experiences was had a huge impact on me being a pleaser for much of my life. Me being living in anxiety and shame and fear. I would say that's the largest one. And it really triggered. It triggered an addiction to pornography. It triggered an addiction to sex. And then being bullied all that entire time, then triggered an addiction to money to be used to try and improve my worth and my value to people. So, I had lifelong addictions to sex, money, pornography, food. And the food one I'm doing much better with. I'm working on with somebody. I mean, literally have just paid somebody else to help me because it's been around since I was 5 or 6. So it's been around the longest time. But, that one event really, triggered just a domino effect of all kinds of things. And I don't know if you follow Dr. Don Wood at all, but he's pretty amazing. He helps people overcome childhood trauma by helping them reframe and restructure their subconscious and the way they look at what happened. And so it's interesting. I had mentioned something about self sabotage. He says, I don't think there's a thing as self sabotage. I think what it is it's just our brains think they need to do at the time to protect us and keep us safe. Right? So, which is pretty
Mm.
interesting. It's not self sabotage, it's self protection. So, but those self protection mechanisms are usually, drugs, alcohol, sex, pornography, procrastination, perfectionism, whatever, what I'm saying? So it could take many forms. But yeah, that one instance, I think what happened is it released the addiction to food, what I'm saying, because I started using food for the pain. So it really exploded that. I mean, my weight got to almost 500 pounds at one point. And so, and then with that went into pornography, which went into having sex at the age of 12, and then starting to make good money, but then using that money to basically I was making $200,000-$300,000 a year, and I was living paycheck to paycheck because I was spending everything that came in the door. So what I'm saying, so yeah, that all kind of mushroom cloud from there. So
Okay, wow. I appreciate
yeah,
the realness of that.
yeah,
It's so relatable. And,
it's
I'm
real.
sure there's so many different. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's so real. Now, this might be a really ignorant
No
question,
such thing.
but I feel that I could be vulnerable in asking this
Yeah.
question to you because of what a leader you are and modeling for me real vulnerability, man to man. Is there anything positive, and if that's a cringy word in this case, constructive, that you took out of that childhood traumatic incident that now has shaped you into the coach and the leader you are?
Yeah, I mean, well, first thing, it's helped me become a significantly better father. I mean, not that the things that I've gone, the things I've done some things as an adult. I spent a year in federal prison, and I for mail fraud, and my I was unfaithful to my ex-wife. I've blown millions of dollars. So, you know, those things, that came as a result of the crap that I went through as a kid. I mean, it's helped me become a much better father. I can tell you that much. The one positive is really working at becoming, and I have amazing relationships with all four of my children. I can give them the guidance that they need so they don't go through the crap that I went through. But the one thing I think also is a nice circle back to empathy is that it helps me help people understand why they are the way they are today, right? Because
Wow.
when I meet with
Yeah.
when I meet with people and they want to figure out, the first question I ask them is, how was your parents' relationship with each other, and how was your parents' relationship with you? And 9 times out of 10, they tell me it's crappy, or 8 times out of 10, they tell me it's crappy, and I'm like, okay. So then it usually leads to where you're physically abused, sexually abused, emotionally abused, and then that allows me to go and help them connect the dots with why they can't get out of their own way today because something happened when they were younger. Interestingly enough, I figured this one out. It took me a little while, but I used to ask them, like, did your parents ever fight with each other? They're like, no, they never fought. I'm like, did they ever fight in front of you? They're like, no. I'm like, so your parents never showed you how to overcome conflict or confrontation? No. So, like, those people like to Leave It to Beaver kids. You know what I'm saying? The great thing is they had a great childhood. It was happy. It was nice. And then as soon as they get out of the house and somebody gives them feedback, they're like, oh my God. And so, right. And so now they're screwed, but for an entirely different reason, because they lack that resilience, that resilience. They lack that, hey, that tough skin, that, hey, this isn't about you, you know, and, rejection is never about us. And so that too has allowed me to look back and say, and just understanding what I went through in my childhood. And I believe this is why God let me go through all that, is that, I can now talk with somebody, help them pinpoint, usually within 15 minutes, what it is that happened. And that really, like, a light bulb goes off. They're like, oh, and then they're like, oh, because now that the awareness is taken care of, now you got to do the work. That's the other half of it. So, yeah, so I think that's been, and it's been good for me too, because I had a huge attic full of boxes in my head I had to unload too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what really stands out to me there is I'm a father of two, and I'm married. And
Nice.
I think I might, if I look at myself with compassion, I think I might be that parent who sometimes wants to shield their children, a 10 and 11-year-old, from rejection in the world. And what I'm hearing from you is it's okay for them to see you struggle a little
Yep.
bit and to deal with things in front of them,
Yeah.
because we model for our children how to show up in the world.
100%. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh, well, thank you for
My
that.
pleasure. My kids are super resilient. They're not perfect. They still cry. They still get their feelings hurt. You know what I'm saying? But they are able to work through it, and they know who to call. And it's not. And the thing is the best thing you could show your kids is that it's okay to ask for help. It's not okay to be needy. And you know what an ask hole is?
What?
Somebody who keeps asking for help or your advice or input and then never takes it.
Oh, I know those people.
Yeah,
It's exhausting.
that's an ask hole, right? So it's okay to show your kids it's okay. Like, sometimes we're the helped and sometimes we're the helper, right? It's okay to ask for help,
Yeah.
and it's okay to get help. It's not okay to get stuck in help mode unless you're somebody who, like, look, if you've been devastated by a disease or an accident and you need around the clock care, that's one thing. You know what I'm saying? But if you continually are going to people and asking them for help and can you lend me money and can you give me this, like that, that's where the problem is. So, I think it's perfectly reasonable to have your kids see you not be amazing at everything.
Love it. If it's okay with you, let's do a really quick round. Some of these questions have been quite deep.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a few quick questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about you or what your tastes are, even more so than when we started this conversation, which is one of the aspects that I would judge. Even though I'm not judging you, I would look at a conversation, and if I feel more empowered and I'm more interested in what that person is speaking with than at the beginning, then I know for me it's going in a direction that I'm grateful for. So, and this is going in that way. So, Wally, what's a book or a podcast that you're reading or listening to right now that's impacting you in a positive way?
So actually, Kristen Neff's book on self-compassion has been really, really impactful for me. I talk to a lot of my clients about, she has these 3 components of self-compassion. The big one for me is common humanity versus isolation, right? Usually when something goes bad, we isolate, which is kind of what you're just talking about, not letting your kids see, the real you sometimes, you know what I'm saying? And rather than isolating, she calls it common humanity. Go talk to people, be in a group of people. Like, you know, forever I railed against, you know, going to group therapy because I'm like, I help people all day. Like, how am I going to help from these people? But one of the benefits of getting in front of a group or going to a support group or hanging out with a group of people, even at church, is that you realize you're not the only one going through it. And that alone gives you a tremendous amount of relief. So, you know, I am listening to David Sinclair's podcast, a Harvard professor, on longevity. You know, as I'm continuing to work on getting healthier and healthier, finding ways to eat well and live longer. He thinks that in 10 years we'll live another 40 years. So I'm starting to plug into what he's saying and stuff like that. So
okay, I will check it out. And what's the worst advice you've ever been given?
If you leave the table hungry, it's your own fault. My mother. I'm just kidding. The worst advice I'd ever been given. I don't know if it's advice. I was probably 12, and I was in the kitchen, and I just cooked some food with my dad. And he's sitting at the kitchen table, and I have my shirt off, and I this little belly hanging over my shorts, and he looks at me and he said, "You're going to have that forever. That's never going to go away." Really, he goes, "Yeah, my dad had it. I have it. You're going to have it. It's never going to go away. So just don't expect that to go away." So, roundabout way is that, you're not, basically you're stuck with what you have.
And finally, it's 3 years from today. You've just awakened from a long sleep. As you look around, you see for yourself, for your family, for your business, what you've always wished and dreamed for. What is different? What have you accomplished that gives you the greatest sense of pride, meaning, and fulfillment? Told me
there's going to be a quiz at the end of the show here. I'm just kidding. So first question is, what does it look like? One of the things I did a few years back, I was having trouble financially, is I grabbed a little 400 square foot apartment so I could, have money to take care of my kids. My financial resources have grown significantly since then. I've just gotten really comfortable here, what I'm saying? And so one of the things is definitely I will be in a house where my kids can come and their significant others will come and really have a place where they can come and enjoy themselves. I see a game room, a pool, and, something where, my family can come and hang out and enjoy family time together. So for sure, in 3 years, I would like to believe, I've been doing everything I can, that I have more residual income coming in than I do now. And that I'm not, like you, I'm sure you work very many hours and, as a coach and, just to add a little more fun to my life. I mean, I've lost everything 4 times. And the last time I did it was in 2014. I had 54 cents to my name. So, I had to start all the way over then, and I spent everything I had on protecting myself and not going to prison forever. So, I started all the way over. So I'm rebuilding. So I've been working hard and, the TV show, the book and all that stuff. So, have some residual income and reasonable amount of savings from the efforts that I put in place. I think most importantly, I'm able to spend the time with my kids that I want to spend with them, and that there's no time commitment or financial commitment that would keep me from being able to do that wherever it is. Create some magic moments for my kids.
Yeah, here's to creating magic moments for our kids, huh?
Yep. And then, absolutely. Then the last thing is meet a woman and have a healthy, happy, passionate, intimate relationship with a woman and somebody who's healthy,
Well, I look forward to that journey, to seeing that and following you, and we'll continue.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Wally, I want to thank you. I do regular podcasts, and your level of vulnerability and courage, it just leaps off my screen here in Toronto, and you're in Dallas, Texas, or near Dallas. And we didn't know each other before this, but I'm almost getting goosebumps on my arm because of the level of inspiration that I feel in this moment, just being in your presence. So thank you, Wally. And just quickly, like I said earlier, when we hear someone who really inspires us to be better by sharing their example, we want to learn more about them. So where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I mean, the easiest way is just go to triggersalesystem.com. It's my page. It's got a lot of stuff on there. It's got testimonials. As a thank you to you, they do go to my page. Anybody who's watching can get a half hour on my calendar. So if they're having trouble getting out of their own way, they are a procrastinator, perfectionist, or they have issues that are preventing them from living their best lives or building their business, they can grab a half hour on my calendar, no charge. Just, my thank you to you. And then, I've a book on Amazon. Actually, I just co-authored another book. They're over my shoulder there. So, and then, I have stuff on YouTube, Facebook. They can check me out at Wally Bressler, just about any social media platform.
Perfect. So check out Wally. And this was the Signature Leadership Show, where we help world-class leaders uncover their authentic selves And in the process, we uncover our own to live better lives. And we clearly did that today with our guest. Thank you, Wally.